Co-Parenting with a Narcissist Masterclass. And we're going to talk about protecting the children from a narcissistic co-parent. And I'm going to look at four main areas that you can look around protection, and then share some resources with you. So the first one is the immediate abuse. Next one, we'll look at long-term abuse. Then we'll look at your injuries, protecting them from that. And then finally, we'll look at the transgenerational element of narcissistic abuse. So first off, how do you protect them from the immediate abuse? So in the majority of cases with a narcissistic parent, the abuse is emotional and psychological. And that is really hard to evidence. And so from a court perspective or social services perspective, you've got to be bang on with how you present your evidence. And that's why I won't get court ready, because that will help you with how to prove the patterns, how to speak the language of abuse to your the professionals involved, whether that be CAFCAS officers or social workers, because the reality is there are no, the evidence is subjective, because it's how it's experienced by the person. And one-off those experiences maybe aren't much, but as a catalogue of behaviours, they add up to much more. And so being able to assess and manage the risk, which is one of the modules in Get Core Ready, you are able to evidence the abuse to your child or your children. And so there is, from a court perspective, it is hard. So for me and for you, it is about what can you do in the time that you have your children to protect them from emotional or psychological abuse. And this includes alienation as well. So these alienating attempts by a narcissistic parent to sabotage the relationship that you have with your child. And what, in terms of how you protect your child, it's looking at the what is being done and then doing the opposite. So if you think about the way that they are going to parent, the issues that they have and that they are bringing forward, how personality disorders are developed, and then look at what that means. It really is quite simple, and I don't mean that raising children is not easy, obviously, but actually the key components of what they need are relatively simple. What they need is a secure attachment. A secure attachment is what will see them through anything and everything, and that includes the behaviours of a narcissistic parent. And how do you create a secure attachment? Well, it depends on how you were parented. What attachment style are you bringing to this? And we'll look at that in your injuries in a bit. But essentially, to create a secure attachment, you need a regulated nervous system. You need to be aware of your trauma and your triggers. You need to be able to meet your child where they are at and meet their emotional needs. And you might think, yeah, I'm doing that, and you will be doing that more than your ex. But due to, like say, your own childhood and your attachment style, plus the abuse that you have experienced, you're not going to be able to do that to the level that will protect them. And so to protect them from that immediate abuse, you need to be looking at what you could do in your own parenting. And that's what this course is all about, is what can you implement from this program into your day-to-day parenting activities. And as I said, I'll share some resources at the end. But what you want to be looking at is, like I say, are you able to co-regulate with your child? Is your nervous system regulated? Only you know the answer to that. If you've got PTSD, the answer is no, it will not be. So healing those areas will help with that immediate abuse, managing that. It won't stop it from the other side, but what it does is it creates almost like an emotional protective barrier. Let's face it, the abuse perpetrated by a narcissist is an attack on our emotions and on our psychology and on our psychological welfare, on our spirit and our core sense of self. And so that protection, that immediate protection in the here and now, is all about ensuring that your child feels secure in themselves, that your child is independent, that your child has a regulated nervous system themselves, is able to get that co-regulation from at least you. They won't get it from the other parent, so it has to come from you. And this is also how you prevent that long-term abuse. So the next one we're looking at is long-term abuse. And in terms of a narcissistic parent, they're looking at promoting and creating children that are codependent on them. They want a child who doesn't see themselves as separate to that parent, who adheres to everything that parent said. And that can either be through fear, outright fear, so that dominating authoritarian style of parenting, but equally it can be sort of emotional blackmail, that emotional incest that occurs where there are no boundaries between parent and child, where the child ends up feeling responsible for the emotions of the parent. And actually, they end up being the one that regulates their parent's emotion. And that's what a narcissist needs, a narcissistic parent needs, is someone to regulate their emotions for them. And so that is what a child is being used for. And so that is the basis for codependency, is making that child feel that the only way they get love is when they are useful to their parent. So again, protecting from that is making sure that they are aware of what their own emotions are. What is theirs? What does it feel like when someone else is feeling a certain way? And helping them to understand that's not their responsibility. They can feel sorry for them. They can wish that things were better for them. They can even empower that person to make the necessary changes to feel better, but it is not their responsibility to make them feel better. Our own emotions are within our own control. And so helping your child to become emotionally intelligent, to understand what emotions are, what it feels like within them, what it feels like when someone else is feeling something, so they don't absorb their parents' emotions. They don't become the regulator for someone else's emotions. Narcissistic parents are also create that low self-esteem because they're not heard, they're not seen, they're not valued for who they are. They're valued for what they can do for a narcissist. And so for you, it's about encouraging that self-esteem. And that isn't about you just going, I think you're brilliant, I love you. That's all that matters. It's about the child learning to love themselves. And that's not easy. You know, as someone who is on this journey towards self-love and appreciation, that's not an easy journey because these are not skills. When you've had that experience, you want to put everyone else before yourself, partly because you think that's the only way you're going to get love, but also because you don't know who else you are. You don't feel like you have an identity outside of that. And so helping your child to explore, who are they? What do they like? What is their choice? And actually, these are visceral feelings. So helping your child tune into their body and what does it feel like when you want to do something? What does it feel like when you don't want to do something? Follow that do want to do something signal, wherever that may be in your body. These are the things that will help them develop that self-esteem and develop that sense of self and prevent that enmeshment that occurs between a narcissistic parent and a child, because the child ends up feeling that everything the narcissist feels is theirs, when actually that's not the case. Again, insecure attachment. Our attachment style is the blueprint for our relationships with other people, including parent-child. So your parent and you and your child and the narcissist and the child. So guaranteed from a narcissist, there's an insecure, disorganized attachment style. That is the basis of narcissism. What that means is the child can't rely on that parent. The child is fear and love. So that trauma bond experience is the disorganized attachment. And obviously from you're also bringing in an insecure attachment style as well. And so your child, in the long term, they will develop an insecure or disorganized attachment style, which can leave them vulnerable to personality disorders, but definitely from abuse in their childhood. Now, it might be that they're the one that's inflicting the abuse, or it may be they're the ones on the receiving end of that abuse. But either way, this situation, if their attachment is not addressed, it can lead to very problematic relationships in the future. It can also affect, academic achievement, friendships, everything. So our attachment is our blueprint for how we see ourselves and the world and other people. And so we want to give them a good blueprint. But there's an element that isn't going to be great. So you've got to be bang on with yours. And that means doing the work and reparenting yourself, either with therapy or a hell of a lot of deep diving. I'm talking years and years of work of really addressing that. PTSD is, again, the long-term impact of living in an environment where you are subjected to the highs and lows of other people's emotions, and you take that on board. Means your nervous system and your stress response system is boom, 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 up and down all the time. Normally it should be waves, gentle waves, but when it's with a narcissistic parent, and even with you in PTSD, it's more like tsunami after tsunami after tsunami. And that obviously can create PTSD in the long term for you and for your child. And so again, nervous system regulation is so important in that. Teaching your children stress management tools, how to reduce stress, how to separate yourself from what's in your control and what's not. Learning solutions. So rather than focus on the problem, focus on the solution. And these are all in the resources that I'm going to share with you. And then obviously the final one is that isolation, that long-term risk of isolation in children of narcissists, because they don't trust, or they feel that they owe everything to the other parent, and so they stay within that parent's locus of control. And they don't ever really break free from that. And if they do, they find someone who's exactly the same. Take the Johnny Depp case. He says, I married my mother, because that was the experience that he had and hadn't healed that. It was familiar to him. And so you become isolated. You become very isolated. And and that doesn't just mean in terms of people. It means in here, you don't feel you can open up and you can share what's really going on deep within you, the sense of shame that you feel, the sense of not being lovable, not being worthy. And this is all because a narcissistic parent doesn't want you thinking about any of that. They want all of their attention on them. You need to fix them. Your priority should be them. So for children, that sense of isolation is really big in that long term. And like I say, it can create a pattern for abusive relationships. So your injuries, what you're bringing to the table, and how you can do the work to protect your child. So again, looking at your attachment style, have a really honest look. There are questionnaires you can do online where you can get the results immediately. That will tell you roughly what your attachment style is. And it's not criticism, the numbers with regard to the insecure attachment styles. Majority of the population, I think it's at least 60%, I think about only 40% of the population have a secure attachment style, which leaves 60% which have the other styles, the less healthy style. So it's not a judgment thing. It's where am I at? Okay, so I need to move from here. So you might have an insecure avoidant, or you might have an insecure ambivalent. And that gives you something to work from. You may have disorganized. It gives you something to work from, and these can be healed. Everything can be healed if you want to heal it. And so look at that, and then work with a professional on how healing your attachment style, healing those core wounds, healing your view of yourself others, and the world. And that is what will create a more secure attachment and a secure base for you to then shift that from the parent to the child. So then whatever the attachment style is of the other parent, you are counterbalancing that. You are the antidote to that. And a secure attachment is a protective mechanism. It's the ultimate protective mechanism. So that is a really important piece of work for you. Again, your PTSD will mean you are going to struggle to co-regulate your emotions. You're going to struggle to regulate your emotions, which means you will struggle to co-regulate with your child. And if you don't co-regulate your emotions with your child, then that is where the child is left alone with their big feelings, or they will end up regulating your emotions for you. And so learning and healing your PTSD is so important, because this is, again, what will impact your child's development. And if you allow those PTSD symptoms to remain and you don't address them, then you're passing on that dysregulated nervous system, and you are unable to meet your child's emotional needs because you're not meeting your own emotional needs. So it starts with you recognizing your own dysregulation and learning how to regulate those emotions. Again, emotional intelligence, learning to identify what it is, recognizing your emotions, understanding what that means, labeling it, giving it a name. And I'm not just talking about the basics, I mean really, really looking at it. So anger is actually an iceberg. It's anger, it can often be frustration, shame, injustice. You know, there's so much that sits under that, and gaining that intelligence to look at, actually, I'm angry, but why? What's underneath that? Being able to then safely express that. And this is where a therapist can really help. This is, you know, we offer therapy so you can have a safe environment to express your emotions, and then being able to regulate them. So once you've done those things, it means you can learn the techniques to be able to regulate. And that's where Neuro Resilience Toolkit comes in. I will link all of these in the video below. And then looking at your own familial patterns around relationships. So what was your parents' relationship like? What was your grandparents' relationship like? What's your relationship like? Really looking at those things and identifying what you bring to the table. What impact has that had on you? What is your feeling about relationships? What should they look like? What shouldn't they look like? Why isn't that happening for you? Again, deep diving, and this is where a safe space with a therapist is great. If you can't afford that, you do that work yourself. And it, like I say, journaling, being really open with yourself and honest, it will take years to be able to do that from someone who has done both, done the work myself, and I've done it with therapists and used lots and lots of different techniques. I'm still but I've been really recognizing what those familial patterns are, because what you want to be healing in that bigger picture is that transgenerational element of narcissistic abuse, which is, if you don't heal your bit, your kids will follow the pattern. And that sounds like I'm putting a lot on you, and I suppose I am, because the other party isn't going to take responsibility. They're not going to do their bit, and some people will feel aggrieved at that, and I understand. But actually, this is an opportunity for you to change the course of your life, and in turn change the course of your children's lives, and ensure that they don't get into these relationships. Ensure that when they're coming into that teenage and early 20s, when they are starting to look at relationships, then they make good choices. They're able to recognize a healthy and unhealthy behavioral pattern in someone. They have a regulated nervous system, which means that they engage in the world differently. They engage with people differently, from a much more secure and calm place, or a place of feeling positive about themselves and other people. And they have a secure base, a secure attachment by which to know that they are worthy of love, they are deserving of love, and they really believe that, not what you've told them, but what they believe within themselves. So those are the key elements for protecting your children. I will put a list of resources below, but I'm just going to share a few bits with you. So Una Archer and myself recorded, and she's an attachment specialist and works with parents after separation, and we record a video on how to protect, and we're looking from the attachment perspective. So I will pop the link to that below. I've written this, which is Help, My Child Has Been Used as a Weapon, and this is all about co-parenting with a narcissist, and it's an attachment-based approach. That's available on Amazon. Again, I will put the link below. Circle of Security, Una runs the Circle of Security program, and that is an attachment-based approach to parenting, and it will help you to recognize your own traumas, what you're bringing to your parenting, and also help you to understand the language of attachment so that you can communicate in that way with your children. So again, I will put all of them below once the video has processed, so it'll probably be either later on today or tomorrow. If you're in the co-parenting with a narcissist masterclass, I will provide resources in there as well. And yeah, so thank you for watching. If you have any questions, do pop them below. I will answer them. And yeah, thank you for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.